don't let
So
anyone tell you what you can't do. I mean, you have to do the work, but
100%, exactly.
don't let anyone tell you you can't do it just because you had a rough start.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Adam Nessum Show. Today we have Casey and Joseph from the PrePT Grind. They've created the PrePT Grind method to help pre-PTs understand the ins and outs of the PT application process. For those that don't know, that's physical therapy, to prevent them from wasting time, money, and effort during the application process. Their grander vision is to grow the physical therapy profession, starting with the ones most likely to create change, which is you, the pre-PT. So thanks so much, guys, for joining me. Really excited to talk to you.
Well,
Thank you.
Awesome. So why don't you guys, can you tell me how this program even started? Take me back. I think we were talking off camera. You said it was 2014 when this all came about. Can you bring me back to how the PrePT Grind originated?
Yeah. So it actually started out of me being frustrated. So my sophomore year in college, I had a handful of my friends that were told, typical thing, by our advisor. But they were told, hey, listen, you guys are a year and a half into college. Your grades are terrible. You'll never be a physical therapist. Pull the plug now. Find something that you can do. And that's it. And all of them listened and all of them left. And the problem is, I think, as a student, you were used to talking to each other about why you chose the given profession. And I just didn't like the idea that somebody could dictate their lives. And at that time, I didn't know that other people in other medical professionals went through the same thing. Like, I didn't know that.
I was about to say it's very common in pre-med also.
Yeah, I had no idea, but all I knew was that our advisor was terrible, for that. I thought she was a nice person, but later I realized that she had never been on that journey. She didn't value it the same way that the students did. So basically what happened was, out of that frustration, I realized that the reason why I hadn't pulled the plug, or the reason why I wasn't listening, was because I was talking to students that were a year ahead of me. So other pre-PTs that were just a year ahead of me. And there was like 2 or 3 students that had just gotten into PT school. And I was just asking them, like, what were you guys doing? Like, how did you guys get through, physics? How did you guys get through biology? That was all I was doing. So the initial idea was just, why can't we recreate that? Students that are a little bit ahead, just helping freshmen and sophomores that are starting out in college. And that was the original idea. What it grew into was a mentorship program. Casey was one of our first coaches. And then years later, it turned into it just grew. And we saw our students that were struggling initially were getting into PT school. And so by the time that I was getting ready to finish PT school, Casey brought up this idea. He's like, hey, man, why don't you just do it online? Like, let's do something online. And so we both just went off, and now we have PrePT Grind. So that's the short version of what we started.
I'm sure there are a lot of ins and outs into starting your own company and all that while being in PT school and working as a physical therapist. But that's really great to hear. And honestly, there's a lot of parallels with your story, as there is mine, for starting the pre-med consultants and a pre-med advising program. And I completely agree. I think it's an unfortunate thing that happens in the pre-health space, which is students being told that they're not good enough to get to their desired profession. And clearly you've seen, and I've seen many times, students who have been told this and then are still able to get in after putting in the work and having the right systems in place.
What's funny is that out of those students that were told initially, like the students that started this whole thing, one of them ended up going back to being a pre-PT a few years later, and he just got his degree, like his PT degree, this year.
Wow.
So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's just a testament to exactly what you just said. I mean, don't let anyone tell you what you can't do. I mean, you have to do the work, but
100%, exactly.
Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it just because you had a rough start.
Yep, completely agree. You can always improve and overcome, but you can't expect just because you're still pre-PT, you're still pre-med, or whatever it is, you're just magically going to get in to that grad school program. You still have to put in the work to get there. So what would you tell a pre-PT student that maybe was just told this by an advisor, or they're just doing not as well as they'd like and are down in general? If they came to you, what would your first piece of advice be, and how would you kind of mentor them?
Yeah. I would think of it like this, like, be careful who you're listening to, kind of like we alluded to before. what is the advisor's story? Have they ever been through this? Are they a physical therapist? Are they a physician? Are they a dentist? If not, yeah, they may have seen a few students along their path, but do they really understand what it takes to get into PT school or pre-med or med school or whatever, right? So you have to be careful about who you're listening to. Then at the same time, try and view it from their perspective as well. So you don't take it so personal. They are looking at you as just a part of their job. They're seeing a piece of paper, and they're probably seeing bio students, exercise science students, pre-health, whatever students, and you're just another person coming in. And their job is to look at this piece of paper, look at this spreadsheet, and look at what you have and say, does it match up? Is this the best path for you in 10 minutes or less? Then they have to bring in the next student. So if they say these things, don't take it so personal. And if you do take it personal, be like, hey, why were they even saying that? And what were they even saying that for? And you can either take it like, oh, well, they just don't know what they're talking about. Or you can take it and put a chip on your shoulder and be like, man, I'm gonna prove them wrong anyways. They don't even know what they're talking about. And you can use that as fuel. So I suggest to them that they try and take a step back and say, first off, who is this person even giving me this advice? Where are they coming from? And 3, how do I even want to take that information to use it how I need to use it to either change directions and take their advice to heart, or just go right for it and, completely disregard their information based on what I know about myself and the whole space to get where I need to go. So in short, I know we all know there's a lot more to that, but that's what I have them thinking about just to start off. Like those two or three things. And I think they should have a good foundation to move on from there.
Yeah. And I think to add to that too, is like, it's just knowing that whatever you're exposed to like the most always makes sense. Right. So if someone it's a really weird thing because we think that if someone tells us we can't do it, then we actually start to believe that because that's what we're exposed to. And maybe our family members add to that because they want to protect us. Right. So mom is like, hey, maybe you should choose something else. She's just trying to make sure that you have a career, that you have a job. And so it's just knowing like whatever you're exposed to the most always makes sense. So if you're exposed to people that are telling you to do something else, the more you listen to that, the more it's going to make sense to you, the more you're going to be able to rationalize it. So just understand that you can choose something different. And like Casey said, you just have to be willing to take ownership and do the work.
Yeah, I think those are both great points. And I think it really comes down to one, first realizing that you don't have to listen to your advisor. Not saying there aren't great advisors out there, but not all of them are. And you shouldn't let someone tell you what you can and cannot do. But then secondly, you have to put in the work. And what I found is that students in general are only willing to put in the work once they realize this is truly what they want. So what would you tell to students that maybe, they're just not sure, is this what they want? Or they kind of just think, this is like a decent career path. And this is what I chose as a freshman. And that's why I'm just sticking through it. And sometimes that's why you see students who have lack of motivation and aren't doing as well. What do you say to those students to help them figure out if this is actually the career path for physical therapy being that career that they would want to go into?
I think it's two things. The first one is more obvious, and that's just expose yourself to it. Because I think there's a lot of people that just don't expose themselves to the profession they want, whether that's, being a physician, being a physical therapist, whatever it is. That's the first one that's more obvious. The second one is more internal. And that's more so just figuring out what you want. Like detach physical therapy, detach being a physician, detach whatever you're aiming for, and just write down. Like, I love journaling. So just grab a piece of paper and just write down, like, what does a successful career for me look like? What is it like? Is it something where I want to help a lot of people? Is it something where I want to work with people? Maybe I don't want to work with people. Maybe you just want to, work on a computer and that's it. So like, what does it look like? And then ask yourself, does it match what I'm aiming for? Because I think sometimes we feel like we have to have this crazy, amazing story. Oh, I got injured. And then somehow, no, like we don't all have that, but this is the career that you're going to be attached to, and you can do different things once you get there, right? Like we're doing, right? But I think those are two things. Like, just expose yourself to it, and then ask yourself, find out for yourself. Don't try to impress anybody else. Don't try to impress your parents or your family members. Ask yourself, what do I want in a career? What does it need to do for me? And what do I need to be able to do for others or my family or whatever? And if it doesn't match, then maybe it's not it. Just because you heard it from a friend, just because you saw it on, top 10 professions in America that will be, whatever it is. So
100%.
That's my answer.
Yeah, just to add to this, because I was actually a pre-pharmacy student before I switched over to pre-physical therapy. And I think two things: don't chase after something just for dollar signs, because that's kind of what I did. For pharmacy, for sure. I was kind of in between both. Just to be honest, I was like pharmacy or PT. I got into this internship, this summer internship. It was super competitive, so I was like, oh, I guess this is a sign. Go to pharmacy. It pays a little bit more at the beginning. I guess I'll choose that. Come to find out, wasn't the right path. I switched back over. So that's one. And two, don't glorify physical therapy or being in medicine or being in dentistry. Don't glorify any of that. I don't care what you see on YouTube, day of the life in this. They are not telling you everything. I don't care what TikTok you see. They are not telling you everything. You see 15 seconds of how great it is to be a med student. You do not see the other 23 hours or whatever it is to be a physical therapist in medicine, a surgeon, or whatever. So those are the two things I would say.
I think that's awesome advice. And to piggyback on that, can you share a little bit of your experience working as a physical therapist or getting into the field and kind of how you got into it?
How I chose physical therapy?
Physical therapy and like your experience in the field.
Oh, yeah. So to keep it short, the main two reasons I chose physical therapy is patient satisfaction, which a lot of people in medicine choose. Then the career opportunities are, in my opinion, just endless. You can do a lot with 1 degree in physical therapy, whether it's clinical, treating everything from the head to the toe, all the age ranges in between, to non-clinical stuff like what we're doing or creating an app. You can be as creative as you want with this 1 degree. Then in the physical therapy field, I work in an outpatient clinic. Sometimes I do skilled nursing facilities as well. But that's pretty much where I'm at right now. I treat mostly orthopedic injuries. Sometimes I see a little bit of neurology in there. I have about 3 or 4 neuro patients right now, but it's mostly orthopedics between 45 and 70. I get some young patients, some athletes sprinkled in here and there, but it's a fun time. It's great. I love the patient population. It's like going to a barbershop every day for work or a hair salon.
That's awesome.
It's great. It's great. That's what I'm doing now. And in short, that's a little snippet of why I chose it and what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think for me, in short, because we're trying to keep everything short, right? there's always a long story.
I know you can go, for sure. You can go on for hours about it.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it was I found physical therapy by accident. I was always told by my parents that there were 3 options and 3 options only. I was born in Kenya, so for me, it was lawyer, physician, or engineer. Those were the big 3. I've ironically heard from other students that were born in other countries and they were told the same things by their parents. But at my high school, my junior year, they did, they invited alumnists, once a year. And basically, these were different professionals that would go into a classroom. You would get to pick 2 of them that you were interested in. You would sit in there, see if you really wanted, ask your question, and that was it. So the 2 that I saw that were out of the 3 that I was given options for were the physician and the lawyer. One of them happened to be full. So I was like, okay, I can't do that. So I signed up for the other. I can't quite remember which one. And so I did the next best thing that any high schooler would do. I picked the list that had most of my friends in it. And it happened
there you go.
Therapist. I didn't know what a PT was. I had no idea. I had friends growing up that were like, I'm going to physical therapy after injuries, but I didn't know what they meant. I was just like, cool, you do you. So basically I went into the classroom, and instead of talking to my friends, this lady who was a physical therapist started to explain what she did. And she had all these cool gadgets, and all I could think at that moment, and this was my spark, was I was like, wait, she gets paid to do that? So for me, my definition of a job switched, because I had always thought, I got to do all this crazy stuff. And she was showing me these things that looked like more play than work. Right. And so that was it. But from there, I just started researching it, talking to other PTs, shadowing them, and I fell in love with it. That's how I got in. For right now, I graduated 3 years ago as a physical therapist. I came down to Florida, became a clinic director here for about a year and a half. But then I stepped away about a year ago to be more PRN. And so now I'm home a little bit more. We have a baby that's going to be born a week from today.
Wow. Congratulations.
Appreciate it. So right now I am, kind of balancing the 2, but still loving what Casey said was on point. It's just loving the opportunities. With PT, you can pretty much decide, hey, I want to go work with, neuro patients, or I want to go work in the hospital now, or I want to go work with outpatient. And so I've been an outpatient ortho PT since starting working with athletes. But it's just cool to know that there's options. And so I love the profession.
How did you get into sports medicine specifically? It sounds like if you've been working with more athletes, was that by chance, or did you seek that out? Because I know that's sometimes more competitive in PT.
I guess by chance. So it's where I got the job. I started working with the orthopedic surgeon for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so because of that, I just happened to just work with.
There's going to be a lot of athlete patients then.
So it wasn't really by choice. I wanted to work with athletes, but I didn't. I figured, hey, let me just get in the profession, and then maybe a few years down, I'll specialize. But because I worked, our clinics were right next to each other, and we worked closely together for a few years. That's how I got into that space.
Awesome. And I noticed when you were telling both of you your stories, it was, you talk about somewhat of a spark or serendipity where you start to fall into it, but then you're really doing your research throughout and continuing to figure out, is this what you want? Because I think a lot of students feel like there has to be this magic light bulb moment or, this big aha moment that's for sure when they knew and that's it. And they didn't do any other research. And I think that's good advice kind of, and how you narrate your own stories of it's a development over time. And I tell students the same thing. So what do you tell your advising students when it comes to like doing their personal statement or interviews when telling their story? And can then you also explain what your accepted system is and the program that you offer?
So the first question was about how they tell their stories and personal statements or interviews and things like that. I think it's there. I break this down in, it takes a longer time, but I try to tell them to not try and change their story to make it seem better than it is or more impressive or this grand old thing. Like if your story was you got injured with an ACL, fine, that's your story. Don't shy away from it just for other people have that story. The difference is how you tell that story, just like a movie. Movies are all basically the same. You got the hero, an obstacle, they overcome the obstacle, whatever, right? That's what you need to follow. But the difference between a great movie and a sucky movie is they tell that story differently. There's more emotion, there's more laughter, there's more excitement, there's more ups and downs, there's more engagement. There's all this stuff around that story to make it better. So don't shy away from your story, whether it's interview, campus visit, essay, I don't care what it is. Just make sure you tell it in a different light so that you can have that box office hit type of story or why you're choosing medicine, dentistry, physical therapy, or whatever. That's the difference. You can have the same story, just like movies have the same storyline, but the difference is why you go see Marvel or versus another movie is that all that other extra stuff around there. So that's the first part. Then Joseph, so you can take the accepted system answer.
Yeah, spot on, Casey. So the accepted system is our coaching program where to keep it simple, we categorize it into 3 different sections. And those sections are clarity, confidence, and control. Because one of the biggest things that we've seen with students who have started with low GPAs or have been rejected. I mean, we've had students that have been rejected 4 years in a row. And they were like, yo, I don't want to do anything else. I still love this. And so what we realized is a lot of them just, one, have very little clarity about where they are in their journey. I think a lot of them are just so stuck to, oh, my classmates applied this school, so I'll apply here, or, not knowing where to apply, not knowing their own situation. Like most people just don't know that they're not doing the right things, right? They don't know that, they're applying to the wrong places or they should be retaking classes. I've seen students that like 3 years in a row, they're like, maybe it's just my year. And I'm like, well, like, what did you do differently?
Right.
Did you, like I had a student recently that was like, yeah, the last year I just worked on my mindset. And I was like, okay, what else? That was pretty much it. And they're applying to the same schools. They haven't retaken any classes. They haven't. And I'm like, well, if you're not going to change, or if you're not going to at least see what's going on. And so clarity is the first thing. And we have certain things that we teach them so that they have that profound clarity. Because if they know, then now they can actually do the hard work, knowing what they need to take care of. Right. And so confidence is the next thing. Confidence in, themselves, confidence in the process. Like we really teach process there. And I just believe that everything has a process. Like business has a process, taking care of patients has a process. And if you can trust that and do the right things to take care of that, then things always go, well, eventually, right? And then the last thing is control. We believe that students have a lot more control than they believe in the process of getting into PT school. Now, I can't control the minds of the professors. I can't control the minds of the chair of the department, but I can control what I have the ability to control. And giving students that ability is what really leads them to dominate. We've had students that have had 2.4 GPAs when they started working with us and got accepted into multiple programs. And we've had hundreds of stories like that. And so that's what the acceptance system does, really takes them through those 3 stages so that they can get themselves into a position to just apply, be confident, do the things that have to be taken care of, not BS themselves so that they can, realize their dream.
I'm just laughing because there's the amount of similarities between what you're telling your students and what I tell mine is pretty, it's cool to see. And it sounds like an absolutely amazing program. Also, I might have to steal that hero journey analogy from you because that was exceptional. I agree. There's so many students that
you got it.
That they're so concerned that they have to be so unique, but it's very hard. But almost all the time, you're not going to be unique in the regards to you tore your ACL or I actually tore both of mine, but whatever it is, everyone's going to have that story, but it's how you tell that story. And I think the way you hammered that home is probably actually relieving for students to feel like they don't need to have this magical, amazing story that no one else in the world has, but it's how they tell it that will be unique and allow them to connect with the interviewer or the admissions committee or whatever it is. In terms of the program itself, so let's say, because we have a lot of pre-PT students that reach out to me on Instagram, and I'm sure we'll be listening to this podcast. So if they were to get started working with you, is it a certain time frame or how does that work for them to join the program and go get the mentorship?
So they can join the program at any time. We do have an application process though, because one of our biggest things is, it's not like a $20 program, right? So we want to make sure that students that are working with us are really serious, because there's no point in wasting your own time by just using a program to serve as an excuse, because sometimes we do that where we're like, hey, I'll just purchase this program. And because I purchased it, I'm doing something.
You're magically going to get accepted because exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So we want to make sure that the students that we work with actually understand that it's going to require serious action. Like one thing I tell students is I was like, you're not entitled to anything. The fact that you've been rejected, because I think sometimes we're like, well, I've been rejected the last 2 years. So it's like, I'm owed an as if my struggle means that I should get that's messed up. Or I have a high GPA. That means I'm owed. No, you're not entitled to anything. And so with students that get that, it's game over. They always crush it. So the way they start is we have a free training that they can watch. And it's at acceptancenavigator.com. And basically it's just teaching them the process and helping them start thinking and just helping them get some direction and clarity. And then after that, if they're like, hey, I want to take the next step, they will have a link there to apply. They will talk to myself or Casey. And if we feel like they're ready and they're ready to take action and take ownership, then it's game over. But if they're not, then we won't let them in. So that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll put in the show notes that link. I actually do the same thing for my pre-med coaching program, and for similar reasons. And also because we have a community of students that we have a group for all the students that write in there, help each other out. We want to make sure that anyone that's going to be in that group is going to be a team player and only build up the group instead of bring it down. So we try to be selective as well. It's not like we will rule anyone out because of a bad GPA. Basically, we just want to see you're going to be a team player and that you're willing to work hard. And if you have those two things down, then we're always happy to have you as a part of the program. It sounds like very similar for you guys. Awesome. So last question for you. What's one piece of advice that you would tell a young pre-PT student right now that you think would make the most impact on their future path?
This could be any time frame, doesn't matter, and all that.
Anything, yeah. Just one piece of advice for pre-PT students that you want to leave them with.
Yeah, just know, I say this all the time, and I'm going to keep hammering it home about, and Joseph alluded to this earlier, about how we have control, right? So I want them to know early on, whether you're pre-med or pre-PT or whatever, that you are a customer of the program, of the med school, of the physical therapy school, of the dental school. They need you, right? Now, don't go in there cocky saying, hey, these guys on this podcast and all that said this. No, just understand that you do have some power. Yes, there are limited seats. Yes, I understand there's other applicants. It's competitive, all that stuff. I get it. We get it. We all know. But at the same time, they need you as a customer to fill their seat. And if you're the best customer for them, then you now have some choice. You now have some control. You have some say-so in what you want to do and where you want to go and how much you want to pay and all that stuff. So know early on, the better you do, the more choices as a customer you have. And you can, hey, call your shot. Now you have 5 acceptances. Hey, I want to go here because of that. I want to go there because of that. Now you can be in that control spot of dictating how you want your future to be, instead of coming from a different angle of saying, can you just please let me in? I'll do anything. I'll pay anything. No. I mean, regardless, determining your situation, you might be in, something might happen where you have to be in that situation. But if you can help it, depending on how much time you have, you can go in there with some confidence with your chest poked out a little bit and say, hey, I do matter. Yes, I do respect the school. Yes, I do respect the profession and everyone. But at the same time, you want me, right? You need to fill your seats to pay your bills. So what do you have to offer me as well? Because I am important. So no matter if you're applying tomorrow, you're sending in that application, or if you're a freshman just trying to figure out where you want to go and what you want to be, please keep that in mind, because it can change a lot. It can change a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. What I would say, there's many things I could say. I'll say seek to understand before wanting to be understood. And the analogy that I use a lot is relationships. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, like, when you're watching like a football game, like the NFL or a basketball game or whatever, and somebody goes to propose, right? And it's all live television and we're all like, oh, this is great. Yeah. And then she says no. My question is always in my head. It's like, did y'all not talk about it? Like,
yeah, like you didn't know that was coming.
Like, yeah, like when I got engaged, I already knew my wife was going to say yes. Like, we had already discussed it. Like, I wasn't scared that she was going to say no. I was more so scared, like, am I going to do it, in a way that shows that I love, all that crazy stuff. And so it's the same thing with being a student. I think a lot of times we try to showcase our side of the story without really understanding their side of the story. And I think there's a lot in the application process that can be avoided if we just understood them. There are very few students there are students that just don't take time to understand the program. Like, research them, talk to students that have been in that program. Talk to professors in that program. Like, are they actually a match for you? You might actually, like for PT programs in specific, you might look at a school and be like, oh, we actually are not compatible. And that's fine. Like, you're not a match for every single school out there. So understand the programs that you're interested in. That's a fun process, because when you actually find a school that you're like, oh, I get them, I really understand them, then you know how to deliver. You know how to communicate certain things. When you're writing your essay, you know what to pull out, because you know it's compatible with them. Same thing with my wife, right? Like, when it comes to her, like, just because she's a woman doesn't mean that she likes roses, right? Like, I can't just assume, right? And we assume so much as students. We're like, oh, they must like the fact that maybe I should have a 4.0. And I'm like, well, not really. Maybe they value something else as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so with my wife, the more I understand her, the more I'm actually able to showcase the things that will allow her or lead her to say, ooh, like, this actually could work. And it's the same thing with schools, because you're applying to a program filled with humans, human beings. It's not a building, it's human beings. And so as students, we spend too much time trying to just prove ourselves. And that's fine. That's part of it. But please take the initiative and understand the schools you're applying to, know them in and out, and you'll see how that plays into the interview. You'll see how that plays into your essays, into all the different things that you pull out. So that's one thing that I would say.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Appreciate your time. Great advice for pre-PT students, and I'd say all pre-health students in general. Where, again, can any of the listeners find you if they want to see your program or just more of your stuff on social media?
Yeah, everything is basically at PrePT Grind, PrePTGrind, whether that's TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, podcast, all that stuff. Or you can just go to preptgrind.com and you can find basically our hub there. Then again, Acceptance Navigator. If you're listening to this and you're like, I am a pre-PT, I'm ready to go, let's do it. acceptancenavigator.com. And you can go through that whole series and we'll take care of you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, guys. If you're listening to this, definitely go check them out. I think a lot of the advice they give will be helpful regardless of if you're pre-PT or not. But if you are pre-PT, definitely go check out the Accepted System and pre-PT Grind.